Right, last week I had this question on statues. Somebody who works as a teacher, and they do, I think they mold, they kind of make statues or something, I don't know, something like this, or some kind of class that they offer. And is this haram? So here's what a lot of people think. A lot of people think that it's haram in Islam, to even have photographs or have pictures of people, and definitely to have figurines or statues or idols. Now, as a result of this, and they think it's haram to draw, so to draw something is haram according to them. So this is why those of you who learn Arabic from the Medina Arabic books, right, you'll probably remember that they used to have these characters in there who were decapitated. I mean, I remember seeing that when I learned Arabic and thinking, what the hell is that? Like, why the hell have these characters... So there's two people having a conversation like, Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum assalam. كيف الحال؟ أنا بخير. هل أنت تريد أن تذهب إلى المدرسة؟ لا. أنا مريض اليوم. And they're having this conversation, but they haven't got heads. It's like they got a neck and their head is cut off. It's like, what the hell is that? People, are you bringing up your kids with this kind of nonsense? Right? So, anyway, you've got that view. Then you've got other, which is absurd, because the hadith mentions, which is a sahih hadith, إِلَّا رَقْمًا فِي ثَوْبٍ, except something which was a drawing on a garment. These people, they use this hadith, أَشَدُّ النَّاسِ عَذَابًا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ الْمُصَوِّرُونَ, which is in Bukhari, that the worst of those to be punished in the afterlife, those who are the musawwirun. So because musawwir can also mean photography, so people say that, oh, photography is haram, which is absurd, right? So okay, put all these arguments aside. So then there seems to be a lot of people who hold the view that, okay, that's all fine, but statues are haram and forbidden, and figurines. Look, people, this is not true. This is not true. Now, there has been a systematic effort over the centuries to drown out the dissent, so you don't even hear about it. But it's not true. So, this is not true. There have been people who have massively dissented on this issue. People in the past, some Malikis, Ibn al-Faras in his Ahkam of the Quran. There's people, Makki, Ibn Abi Talib, right, the Maliki, he highlights this difference. Alusi brings it from them, this transmission, that this was to do with early Islam. Because people used to worship statues back then. Okay? They used to... So they'd just come out of this. So the Prophet was very strict on not having idols. Otherwise, they had figurines. Aisha, right, who was a girl in her late teens, had figurine dolls and things like this. People had these statues. But there was a fear, because these people were so into idolatry, that this is why the Prophet condemned this. How else do I know? Look, people like the 8th century Maliki legend, Abu al-Abbas al-Qarafi, known as al-Qarafi or Shihabuddin al-Qarafi, who has many books. He has one book called The Reservoir, the Dhakhira in Maliki fiqh. And he's written books on usul and all these other things. He actually highlights how he was a major. He used to create figures, and he was an expert at creating these little kind of dummy figures. And he speaks about in his time. In fact, I actually obtained this to read it. I don't know if I've still got it here. I'll try to bring it up. But in his time, there were people who had created what they called shamadan. These things with these wax figures on there. And they were used as clocks. And some of them were so good that these figures would do different things. Like, so at such a time, this would happen. You know, like you get the kind of like cuckoo clocks coming out and going, I don't know, cuckoo, whatever, making certain sounds and doing this and doing. So they had these in this shamadan, shama, which means wax, and this is from Farsi, like the holder of these, right, that they would do all these different stunts, and these were then made as gifts for like royalty and aristocrats and stuff like this. And Qarafi was a genius at making these. So he actually speaks about his own, and he speaks about rivaling some of the top people in his time. And I actually got hold of this. I'll see if I can still get this here. One moment. Right, okay, here it is. I'll read this out. So he's speaking about these aren't the clocks I have, but you know, in the past, like, I don't know, you've seen in movies or on, you know, you have these clocks, the cuckoo kind of, with the kind of bird comes out and goes, makes the sound that it's every o'clock and it does stuff. So like this, obviously today we've got electronic digital clocks. People, clocks, watches. Look at that, people. Let me show off my my new watch. Clocks, right? So the thing is, but in the past, this is in his time, so we're talking almost 600 to 700 years ago, right? And this is a Maliki legend, and he says, look, وَكَذَلِكَ بَلَغَنِي, and this is transmitted from his Kitab al-Nafa'is al-Usul, which is a book on Usul. He ends up talking about his time. And he says, وَكَذَلِكَ بَلَغَنِي أَنَّ الْمَلِكَ الْكَامِلِ وُضِعَ لَهُ شَمَعْدَانِ. And he says that this king, he had this shamadan, this particular shamadan. كُلَّمَا مَضَى مِنَ اللَّيْلِ سَاعَةً انْفَتَحَ بَابٌ مِنْهُ. That every time 1 hour, but this is their hour. Their hours may not correlate exactly to our 24 hours, but 700 years ago, how they understood, like they used to call it an hour as well, but a portion of the day. It says, كُلَّمَا مَضَى مِنَ اللَّيْلِ سَاعَةً. Every time an hour went past, a door would open. وَخَرَجَ مِنْهُ شَخْصٌ. And an idol, like this character, would emerge. يَقِفُ فِي خِدْمَةِ السُّلْطَانِ. Who would emerge like in a humble kind of like posture. And he says, فَإِذَا انْقَضَتْ عَشْرُ سَاعَةٍ. When 10 hours would go by, طَلَعَ شَخْصٌ عَلَىٰ أَعْلَى الشَّمَدَانِ. That when 10 of these, and remember, hours aren't like 60 minutes, but the hours would go by, a character or an idol would emerge on the top of this whole shamadan, and he would say, Sabbah Allahu Sultan, long live the king, bis sa'ada, that may God make the king forever happy. He would say this. There would be sound. فَيُعْلَمْ أَنَّ الْفَجْرَ قَدْ طَلَعَ. That 10th hour would occur as with dawn, so they would know that it's Fajr has happened. He says, check this out, وَعَمِلْتُ أَنَا هَذَا الشَّمْعَدَانِ. He says, I made one just like that, a replica of this. وَزِدْتُ فِيهِ. And I increased, check this out, his expertise, people, engineer, this is. I increased in it, أَنَّ الشَّمْعَ يَتَغَيَّرْ لَوْنُهَا فِي كُلِّ سَاعَةٍ. These idols, their color would change with the passing of each portion of the day. With each hour going by, their color would change. وَفِيهِ أَسَدْ. And there would be a lion as well. تَتَغَيَّرُ عَيْنَاهُ مِنَ السَّوَادِ الشَّدِيدِ إِلَى الْبَيَاضِ الشَّدِيدِ. The lion that he would have, his colors, his eyes would go from black to white as the hours of the day would pass. And then إِلَى الْخُمْرَ الشَّدِيدِ. And then to red they would turn. فِي كُلِّ سَاعَةٍ لَهُمَا لَوْعَانِ. As every portion would go by of the day, he would have two different eye colors would change for the lion that he had in this whole big massive clock which he created with idols. He says فَيُعْرَفُ التَّنْبِيهِ فِي كُلِّ سَاعَةٍ. So we could know when each hour has gone by. وَتَسْقُطُ حَسَاتًا مِنْ طَائِرَةً. And he said, I placed two birds that would drop two pebbles with each hour that would go by, and one person would go in and another person would go out, and a door would open and a door would close, and when it was dawn, somebody would come out at the top with his fingers in his ears. The person would come out like this as though he's about to do the adhan. He says, Qarafi says, I created all of that, these idols, except, he says, غَيْرَ عَنِّي عَجِزْتُ عَنْ صُنْعَةِ الْكَلَامِ. He says, I could not figure out how they created the vocals. He says, all this I mastered, but I couldn't do that. And he says, وَصَنَعْتُ صُورَةَ حَيَوَانٍ, and I created many creatures, يَمْشِي وَيَلْتَفِتْ يَمِينًا وَشِمَالًا, that they would move and they could look left and right, except, he says, and they could produce a whistling sound, but I couldn't get them to produce vocals. This is Qarafi, who is a Maliki don and a legend, a scholar who has many works and legal rulings. He himself produced these kind of these idol figurines and statues, and this is not haram, people. Okay, I'm just trying to say that ruling was only because people were early in Islam. Okay,